Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports podcast. We're talking Chiefs today with columnist Sam McDowell and beat writer Jesse Newell. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. Guys, we're in the great balancing part of the season for the NFL, right? The NFL Combine, the draft is coming up in April, the schedule will be out in May. This is the time of year where the NFL does everything it can to give everybody a fair shot at a championship. If you were bad last year, you're drafting first. If you were good last season, chances are you had a pretty high payroll and you don't have a lot of salary cap space. And of course, we know with the scheduling how that's attempts to be a great equalizer. So the question is, how are they positioned for this period of the season? I think we should start with the NFL Combine, since that's the most recent event. Andy Reid was there. Brett Veach was there. What were the sort of the main takeaways for the Chiefs from the Combine?
Well, yeah, I mean, the main thing was what happened right after we talked to Veach and Andy Reid, Sam, which was the franchise tag for Trey Smith. And we did not expect that. We talked about that before, that, the Chiefs have to lock up that money now for Trey Smith. They have to reserve it for him. And it sounds like they're going to come to an extension relatively soon to give themselves some flexibility. But to do that with Trey Smith, especially after a Super Bowl where left tackle was a big issue and they still have to address left tackle somehow, and to devote that type of money to left guard, center, right guard, and right tackle, it was a little bit surprising. And so to kick off the offseason that way for the Chiefs, that's something definitely we learned. They still have a lot of things to address in a lot of areas, whether it's defensive line, linebacker, receiver, running back, to address in both free agency and the draft. But to start off with the Trey Smith thing, I mean, they seem like they're committed, Sam, to Trey Smith now for the long term, and that just gives them another player that is at the top of the market for his particular salary, whether it's Creed Humphrey at center or Joe Thuney at left guard or Patrick Mahomes at quarterback or Travis Kelce at tight end or obviously Chris Jones last year at defensive tackle. So their cap room, you'd rather not have cap room than have a bunch. You can't, it's hard to spend all the money you usually waste it on things. So it's good for the Chiefs to sort of be up against the cap in that situation. It means they have good players that are luckily liked up. But right now, Sam, they don't have much flexibility unless Clark Hunt starts spending cash like we haven't seen him do in the past, and maybe there's a transition or a change that way, or that they are going to figure some things out in the draft that's unforeseen right now. So it's kind of a very interesting position for the Chiefs to be in, especially after that one move, which is one we didn't expect.
I'll go back to the Super Bowl and the week leading up, and we had a conversation with Brett Veach. And during that conversation, he sat down with reporters who regularly cover the team, said that if the Chiefs were going to take a big swing in free agency, he'd rather it be with one of his own players, a player that they, came through the organization. Even then, I wasn't thinking Trey Smith would be. I just didn't think they'd be able to afford the type of number that we were hearing at the time. As it turns out, that's exactly who he was thinking about, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I actually don't know if that's who he was thinking about at that time, but just because the salary cap they were operating under the blueprint. Veach told us that at 269 to 270 million, and it comes in at 279.2, and I think his quote was that puts Trey back in play.
That's what he said, I think, at the Combine.
At the Combine,
yeah. And so I think that changed their thinking on their ability to afford Trey Smith. I certainly think there's reasonable questions to ask, and I asked him in a column over the weekend about whether or not Trey Smith's the right guy to invest in for this team. I mean, Trey is a terrific teammate. We've all talked to him a lot. He's great to talk with. His teammates love him. He plays hard. Like, he's a guy you want on your roster, in your locker room every day. But the Chiefs are sort of running it back with their offensive line, and there were a lot of questions and reasonable questions about their offensive line last year, and now this running it back, except for it's going to cost you a hell of a lot more money because Creed Humphrey's making money, Trey Smith's making money, and so now, Joe Thuney's making money. So now your timeline on Trey Smith, to me, look, you've got, I think it's till like mid-July to work out a long-term extension with Trey Smith, but the Chiefs' timeline to me is like a week away.
A week, yes, exactly.
You need to sign Trey Smith before free agency opens if you want to do anything in free agency, because the difference between this year and last year when you tag L'Jarius Sneed is you have a lot more needs on this roster than you did a year ago. I mean, I think this seals the fate, most likely, of guys like Justin Reed. It's going to be really hard to bring Nick Bolton back, and I don't think you should invest big dollars in those players, but you've got to have somebody to play there. And
someone's got to play.
Yeah, the Chiefs are really handcuffing themselves what they can do in free agency if they don't work out an extension with Trey Smith. And look, you have these conversations with the players at the Combine. I mean, it's very, very possible that the Chiefs gathered some intel to let them know that an extension with Trey Smith would be possible.
It might be handcuffing themselves either way, Sam, right? I mean, at some point...
You can backload a deal because Juwan Taylor comes off the books after this year. Joe Thuney comes off the books after this year. So you can line that up to pay Trey Smith his bigger dollars in those years and take less of a cap hit this year.
But every year, I mean, this is what the Chiefs' curse is, if you want to call it that, but like... they're going to get the fifth-year option on George Karlaftis and Trey McDuffie. I mean, you're going to want to pay them at some point, right? I mean, like, you just continue to have this cycle, and at some point, you have to make a hard decision on a guy that you like. And so they didn't make that hard decision on Chris Jones, obviously. He played great last year. He's got 2 years left in his contract. He's going to be paid the richest of any defensive tackle out there. So we'll see how that turns out. But the other part about this fit thing, Sam, which I think is interesting, is like Trey's best quality. Obviously, he's young, and the Chiefs tend toward younger players, but he's like a road grader when it comes to run blocking. Well, that's great if you're the Falcons. That's great if you're some other teams out there. Like, it's not necessarily what the Chiefs do. Now, maybe they'll get back to that more with their interior three secured, but that opens up the question again at left tackle, and they can't go into next year with the same plan they had this year. We all know that, and Andy Reid even told us at the Combine that, no, Joe Thuney was not going to be their solution at left tackle this next year. So a lot of questions to answer, and by saying and committing yourself to Trey Smith, all of a sudden, there's just a lot fewer avenues to be able to address a lot of different things. You're going to have to come up and pull some rabbits out of your hat here coming up in the next few weeks.
Aren't they a little backed into a corner when it comes to left tackle?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
yes.
And isn't that part of this equation?
Yeah, I think it's a major part of the equation that if you have one problem that you don't know if you're going to be able to solve, don't create another problem in the interim, also on the offensive line. And that's why I said I do think this is more of a long-term look than people are giving it credit for, because Juwan Taylor and Joe Thuney will probably come off the books next year, and then he and Creed Humphrey are the guys you're playing. But look, it's a non-premium position, and this gap that you're talking about is a premium position in the NFL for a reason. But it's hard to acquire. When you go through and look at the way teams have acquired left tackles, it's primarily top 15 picks. The Chiefs haven't drafted in the top 15. Brett Veach actually joked with us that he joked with Andy Reid, well, I know why we can get a left tackle. Let's suck next year and draft in the top 10.
Well, hold that thought. Talk about I think he mentioned the nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
I thought that was
his worst fear. It was really fascinating. At the Combine, he said his worst fear is getting into the end of the first round, and their board says there's a first-round defensive end or defensive interior guy, and there's a first-round cornerback, but, there's a third-round tackle left, and their big hole is at tackle. And the Trey Smith thing leads you further down that road. And, I mean, to be fair to the Chiefs, Blair, normally kind of overwhelmingly, if you're talking like the draft, most people would say don't trust yourself so much. Like, mostly stick to consensus boards. Mostly don't trust in your own knowledge that much because, humans are fallible and we can't get everything right. But to counter that, like, Brett Veach usually has been right. When he trades up for a guy and when he has conviction in a guy, they're usually right. And when guys don't fall to them and they maybe reach for a guy, those guys really haven't been right. And so, yeah, you're setting up this interesting scenario where the Chiefs could get through free agency and desperately need a left tackle. And at the end of the first round, they just got to take whatever tackle's there. And that's too bad because when they haven't reached, they've gotten guys like Trent McDuffie and they've gotten guys like Xavier Worthy. And, they've gotten guys like Leo Chanel. And all these guys have fallen to them and they've worked out and they've been right on those guys. So, yeah, this is tenuous right now. And I don't know, maybe there's a free agent guy they can sign that just – Sam, you talked about kicking the can down the road or stopgap. Like, the perfect solution for the Chiefs is to find a one-year solution and then try the draft again next year. But like, I don't know that guy's out there, and the left tackle market on free agency is really bad too. So this is a problem that doesn't have a clear solution right now, and I'm sure it's one that's keeping Brett Veach up at night.
That's not Ronnie Stanley. He's looking for a long-term deal.
Yeah.
He's with Jackson re-signing with the Rams.
Yeah.
I don't even know who is left.
Yeah, I mean, so
at left tackle.
Yeah, I mean, everybody I think on the market, and it's the same story as a year ago, is older, and the Chiefs don't like to pay older players.
No.
Or they have an injury history. I think Ronnie Stanley's both. Or they're not top tier, in which case you're devoting, a lot of dollars towards players that really don't deserve to be paid at that level. And I view one of the effects of this Trey Smith thing is kicking this left tackle can down the road another year and potentially going with like a DJ Humphries and still drafting somebody, but it's a second or third or fourth round pick, and in which case you're kind of going with a pretty similar formula as a year ago. But in their defense, I think the worst thing the Chiefs could do is overspend, and I mean overspend in the draft or overspend in free agency for a guy they don't really feel all that confident about, because then you're creating a whole new set of problems if you do that. And like I said, I think that's one of the reasons, like, Trey Smith has a certain floor that you at least know, even if he's not the best right guard, and I don't think he is the best right guard in the league, you are still getting something out of him.
Brett Veach has talked about that before. Like you mentioned earlier, Blair, where it's you look at free agency and you don't love any certain guys, but you love the guys in your building. You love the Trey Smith. Sam wrote a great feature on him earlier this year about all that he's been through, with his heart condition and getting drafted in the 6th round and making it big. And, I mean, he's the Chiefs type. He's a great locker room guy. He's young. He's athletic. He's beloved by people around him, and he's a team leader. And so, yeah, I think the quote from Brett Veach was like, in a perfect world, do you sign, 2 guys you're not sure about in free agency, average guys, or do you sign the one guy that you really love? And that's the direction the Chiefs went in. It's just, again, it makes you wonder about the vision of the whole offseason, because there are other needs to fill, and those are needs as well. And so we'll see how the Chiefs go about doing that here over the next couple of weeks.
He's big enough to play tackle, but that's not what you do with
a guy. He played tackle. In college, like after he went through that hard thing, this was actually, I didn't really get into in that story, but it was actually the most like, what happened? Like aspect of it is when he didn't practice for an entire year because of his blood clotting issue, Tennessee not only agrees to bring him back, but they move him to left tackle. And I'm sure he's thinking, well, guys, I haven't even practiced at guard anymore. Like now I got to play left tackle all of a sudden. So he played tackle in college. That's kind of a funny thought I hadn't. Obviously, their first instinct was to move Joe Tooney out there, but at least he's done it before, I guess.
Jeff Schwartz brought this up online. I asked Brett Veach, and I think he was just surprised by it and wasn't ready to answer, so he didn't really answer it. But, I mean, moving Jawan Taylor to left tackle? Yeah. I mean, if you do that, we've seen Wanye Morris be way more comfortable at right tackle. At least then you feel like, okay, there's the potential for average left tackle play and then a right tackle who feels at least in his comfortable position. But part of this, Blair, to your point too, is making the pieces fit on the Chiefs roster. And bringing Trey Smith back, like now that's another year for them, I guess, to develop Kingsley Suamataia potentially for when Joe Tooney's gone. But they feel good about him at guard, but now that's going to be another year down the line. Or Hunter Norzad, who they drafted last year, have high hopes for. That's another year down the line. So trying to make this offensive line, all these pieces fit, I hate to say it, I mean, I don't think that's an easy transition, especially this far into Jawan Taylor's career, but I probably feel better about that option than I would maybe whatever free agent they're going after. I don't know. It's a really interesting dilemma at this point for the Chiefs, but based off how the Super Bowl turned out, we know they have to address it.
So DJ Humphries is a free agent too. They're gonna re-sign him.
I think they will. I think DJ Humphries would like to see what it's like actually going through training camp and an off season with this team. And look, if they don't sign anybody, I think he feels like he could start.
Well, I think that's if you had to pie graph it, I think he's got the largest slice of the pie in terms of,
and I don't know if it's more than 50%, but I agree with you. Yeah.
But and the problem at some point is like the proof's in the pudding. Like, if they loved him and trusted him and wanted him, he was healthy at the end of the season, or at least mostly healthy, and the Chiefs didn't go to that. So I agree with you guys. It sounds like he's going to be back this next year on some sort of deal and liked being in Kansas City and is a good locker room guy as well. But if they loved him, they would have played him at the end of the season, and that did not happen.
Okay, a couple other topics we should hit, but let's stay in the Combine for now. Had some interesting local stories emerge from the Combine, starting with Armand Membu, speaking of a position of need for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Tackle for the Missouri Tigers, who, I don't know, I guess when I first started seeing mock drafts, he was not in the first round. He was maybe a second day guy. He's not only in the first round now, he's in the upper half of the first round. If this were the NBA, he'd be a lottery pick, perhaps now.
Yeah.
That's a neat story because he's from Lee Summit North, went to Lee Summit North High School. So always great to see a Kansas City kid show out at the Combine. He's made some money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, in like mid-summer, I think he was in like the third round.
I've got it right here, Sam. Grinding the mocks from Ben Robinson. Look at this. Yeah, 6th round, June 2024, and then all the way up to pick number 18 right now. So, wow.
Yeah, no, he ran really well. He's 332 pounds, and according to Next Gen Stats, he's the first guy over 6'4", 330 since they started tracking this combine data that's run a 4.91 in the 40, which is what he did. And on first glance, I think people look at it and say, tackle, do I really need my tackle to outrun anybody? But there's actually a lot of correlation between tackle's 40 time and his production in the NFL in terms of, like, it's hard to measure production for a tackle. So the graph that Sumer Sports did a year ago was based on playing time for tackles. And it's actually the most correlated data point from the combine to playing time is a 40-yard dash for an offensive tackle.
For a tackle.
And the reason is because, look, I mean, sometimes you do ask these guys to play in space with a screen pass or get to the second level in a running play, but the most notable thing is it shows an explosion ability with your lower half, and it also shows a quickness to where there is a reason that Jawan Taylor tries to get a head start on snaps all the time. Like, if you've got a better get off and you don't have to cheat to do it, it is a major advantage to do it. And Jawan Taylor's a guy that got singled out in this, but there's tons of tackles that try and do that. Like, he's got the quickness and he's 332 pounds. Yet there is, like, one size question mark with teams, which is, are his arms long enough? He's under, I think the Chiefs try and prefer like 34 inches. Some teams go. The LSU kid, I think a lot of teams thought as a tackle. His
Will
arms,
Campbell.
His arms are under 33 inches. So I think now he's pretty much guaranteed to be a guard.
As are Membu's. I think Membu was measured 32.
33 and a half.
33 and a half.
What
Okay,
his
thanks.
were. But he still has shorter arms to where some teams are going to have concern about that. But I think they probably feel like he can play tackle, and if nothing else, you're getting like a really athletic guard at that spot. And so it was somebody that I actually said to Jesse during the combine, it's kind of funny, I really haven't heard the Chiefs connected at all to Membu, and I wonder why that is. And now it's like, it doesn't even matter if they do their homework on him because he's not going to be there at 31.
He might have been a steal if he had just run, just a little bit slower in the 40.
Well, he only ran once, which made me think, I don't know if he expected to run a 4.9.
Right. Another local product who had a good combine was Brady Cook. Happy to see that for Brady Cook.
The guy has been like an underdog story his entire college career, and then goes out to the combine. I think one of the reasons he's an underdog story is people have never given him credit for being athletic at all. Even though he was a better runner than, a lot of opposing deep. I thought actually one of the reasons Mizzou's offense was worse this year is because people were actually like, well, wait a minute, Brady Cook can run.
Yes.
We do have to respect
account
the fact
that
he can run. And it changed Missouri's offense because of that. I think some people are going to look and say, hey, he had really good wide receivers to throw to. Their offense could have been more explosive knowing that. But, I mean, did he lead quarterbacks in the vertical leap? Or I know some guys didn't participate. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders,
Yeah,
a lot of the top
first.
guys. But his athleticism was, his RAS score, I think, was, top 10% historically. So I anticipate that he's going to be, like a 4th, 5th, 6th round pick, somewhere in there.
At the running back, which sort of position making a little bit of a comeback. It's getting a lot of pub, the running back. A couple local products. DJ Giddens from Kansas State, Devin Neal from KU. I heard Giddens had a good combine. I don't know if I heard anything on Devin Neal.
He ran a 4.6 40. So look, that's slow for a running back, but I don't think anybody should have been watching the Devin Neal tape and anticipating that he's a burner. It's his agility, and it's the way he, sees the game too. That I still think Devin Neal's going to be fine because I think he'll have to run again in his pro day because he probably doesn't want it to start with 4.6. He needs to run probably more in the 4.5s to feel pretty good about getting taken in the 4th round or something like that. But that's never been his strength. He's never been somebody who just runs away from guys. So I still think there's a lot of teams, including the one we cover, that could use a guy like Devin Neal.
Yeah, Devin Neal's biggest problem right now is he's in a loaded running back class. I mean, I think it came out last year we'd be having different conversations about him. But to Sam's point, I mean, speed is not his thing. It is contact balance. It's breaking tackles. It's being able to receive the ball in the backfield. And great kid. I covered him at KU, back before I started covering the Chiefs. And, you could tell right away he was going to be a team leader and, representing the absolute best of what KU football could provide. And obviously, potentially, he'll have a statue of himself outside of the new Memorial Stadium here a few years down the road. So, yeah, again, it could have been better. And as Sam points out, probably wants it to be a little bit better so he can take that particular stigma off of there. But the sprint speed is not going to be his thing. And so if teams look past that, they're going to get themselves most likely a pretty good running back in the later rounds.
Don't you think the Chiefs will draft a running back?
They better. Yeah, because like Jesse mentioned, it is a loaded class. I don't think Isaiah Pacheco can be an every down running back. So I think they not only need to draft a running back, I think you could get in a situation where you need to add a running back in free agency. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying spend on one of the top guys available, but you can have a cheaper running back, a veteran guy, and then also draft one. I think you need both.
You got to see if Pacheco's healthy. He was a different running back and was not, we talk about speed, was not displaying the speed he had previously after both the injuries he suffered during the season. And so a lot of questions for him to answer. I still potentially could see him getting back through a healthy offseason, but wouldn't think Kareem Hunt's in their future, and obviously wouldn't think Samaje Perine would be unless that's a short-term deal like they did with Jerick McKinnon. So, yeah, lots of running back spots available. Continues this theme for the Chiefs, which is they have a lot of free agents to be on their roster, whether it's defensive line, whether it's linebacker, whether it's running back. So they have a lot of roster positions to fill and a lot of question marks still out there when it comes to those positions.
Can I just real quick, Blair, make a note that to connect these two items with Mimbu and the running backs. So Mimbu reached 20.3 miles per hour on this 40-yard dash. Kareem Hunt has never done that in a game. Never done that in a game. Patrick Mahomes has never done that in a game. That's how fast he was moving for 332 pounds.
You saw the film of that. The film is...
It was noisy.
Yes.
Noisy, right. Yeah. It was like watching Serena Williams play tennis or something, yeah.
Good on him. Good on him. Did Lee Summit North win the state with him?
I think they finished second, maybe. They did not win. Okay. I think they lost to a really good Liberty North team a year ago as well. Or, I don't think they won state. Okay. But their head coach Jamar Mosey is now with Nebraska.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. All right. Falling under the category of writing about something that hasn't happened and continues not to happen. That's Travis Kelce's retirement. That gained a lot of steam after the season, after the Super Bowl. By all measures, it's not going to happen. Kelce will be back, and I kept hearing about how his salary, would how he would help the Chiefs' cap by retiring. I think he would hurt the Chiefs' team by retiring, but he would help the cap if he had retired. But what do we make of the news of Travis Kelce returning for at least one more season?
Yeah, it was interesting being at the Combine because I think Brett Veach, and he's always, pretty open to talking at these sort of events, but it's just to give people kind of a peek behind the curtain. Brett Veach talks at the podium to a bunch of media members, and then he comes off to the side and talks to us reporters, and then he goes around and kind of makes a loop with national TV, national reporters, kind of like a car wash, go see somebody for 10 minutes and give lead to the next. But basically everywhere he went, he made clear that Travis Kelce had this meeting in the offseason with Andy Reid and that, he was looking to come back. He didn't want to go out on those terms. And so it almost seemed like a mission for him to get that narrative out there that this thing is basically done. He was not ruling it completely out. Basically, hey, it's time for Travis Kelce to come back, and he fully expected him to do that. So it was pretty interesting with the following that Travis Kelce has, and obviously the podcast that he has. You would have thought that sort of announcement would come via him on his podcast. Right. And instead, it really came out in secondhand through a Combine, and then the next day, he obviously goes on Pat McAfee or Pat McAfee texts him and confirms that he's coming back, all those sorts of things. But I think to the earlier discussion I had about free agency and, you look at some of the teams out there that have just a ton of dollars, like the Bears always historically seem like they have a ton of dollars, and then they put their hopes into getting Trey Smith, and then Trey Smith signs the franchise tag with the Chiefs, and like all of a sudden you have all this money, you're like, oh crap, what am I going to spend this on? Like for the Chiefs, they know what they're getting from Travis Kelce and his $17 million. They understand the leadership. We know he doesn't break as many tackles. He's not as fast as he used to be, but I think they know what they're getting out of him. And what Sam has asked about a lot and written about a lot is some of the off-the-field stuff, the leadership type stuff. I think that goes a long way in their locker room. When your best players in Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce have the type of standard that they set for themselves in practice and in games and outside the building, inside the building, I think it goes a long way towards the type of culture you want to create. So this seems like the last go-round. I think it seems like a kind of a perfect thing for Kelce to be able to do this one more time, to put his all into it. And he even mentioned potentially getting himself in some better shape coming into his final season and knowing this is the last final go-round for him. So I think it's a good deal all around for the Chiefs. Could they've used the salary cap room? Potentially, but I think they know what they're getting with Travis and the way that he's respecting that locker room and what he does for them. I do think they know what they're getting, and it's getting a good player on the field and a good player off the field as well.
Do you buy into the idea that he was sick for the Super Bowl?
Well, I wanted to ask you about that, Blair, because you interviewed him after the game.
I was standing 3 feet from him.
I was standing next to him. He probably should have given you a heads up so you didn't get sick yourself, right?
I don't remember if he coughed or anything, but
did you get sick after?
A little sniffly? No, I didn't get sick, but I heard that not immediately after the Super Bowl, but in a couple of weeks after the game, that he had played sick or was sick.
Brett said at the Combine in one of those car wash interviews.
Yes, that's how it got traction here. And I don't know, he gave an impassioned speech, was from all accounts, to the team the night before, and he didn't play well in the Super Bowl, but nobody did for the Chiefs, maybe except for Xavier Worthy. And all of a sudden he was... Anyway, I don't give much credence to it, and it's not the type of thing that... I do remember both teams dealing with a little bit of the flu at the Super Bowl, though.
Mm-hmm.
That was earlier in the week. That was a story.
The only thing I will say is that Brett Veach brought it up in that interview unprompted. Sort of like when we were at the Combine, me and Sam, and he was asked about the salary cap going up, and unprompted he said that could put us back in for Trey Smith.
Right.
And so that ended up being true in a way we didn't anticipate, which was the franchise tag. So probably something there. I don't see any reason for Brett Veach to totally come out of nowhere and say it and give excuses for his guy, especially when the conversation's not... He wasn't asked if Travis Kelce was sick, but is that played up a little bit? Potentially, because otherwise, Blair, you would have been maybe the sickest of the bunch. You were right up in his face after the game.
So, all right. It's only less than a month from your first mock draft, Jesse. I cannot wait. I'll do 1 or 2. You'll do 2. Give us a little preview. Who you got him taking? With number 31, the first of 6 picks. Probably will end up being 7, but right now they're at 6.
Oh, I want to hear what Sam thinks. I'm still listening. So much depends on what they do in free agency and what needs they address there and what holes are left over. Because we just mentioned the offensive tackle situation. I don't think you can just not address it at all. But the depth is at defensive interior, the depth is at edge, and the depth is at cornerback. So, and like they've got a lot of free agents they got to fill in for on the defensive line. Like we talked about this so much, Blair, that the guys they got coming back on the D-line are like George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, Mike Dana, and who am I missing? I'm missing one, Felix.
Yeah, Felix and Udike Uzama.
That's it.
Yeah, gone or...
As of right now.
Yeah.
Turk Wharton could be gone. I'm not Mike Dana. Mike Pennell could be gone.
Charles Omenihu.
Derek Nottie.
Yep.
They need some depth there, and Chris Jones isn't getting any younger either. So I can't give you an exact name yet. I would say a defensive interior right now. That's the way I would be leaning, and sometimes you just have to go with the depth of the draft, and that still fits a huge need for the Chiefs to be able to get younger there, more athletic, and get somebody next to Chris Jones who can take advantage of the matchups advantages he provides. So I won't give you a name yet, but I'll say that they go ahead and stick to their board and take a defensive interior for their first-round pick, just based off of how they've done things in the past and based off of the strength of this particular draft. Sam, agree?
Well, I think the couple tough decisions for him will be if Josh Simmons, who missed a lot of time last year at Ohio State, but was probably going to be a top 15 pick had he been healthy all year. If he falls to, like 23, 24, I could see them trying to make a move. They do have an extra third-round pick to play with, even though they're deprived of picks later in the draft. So that's an interesting one. And I don't know what they think of Josh Connerly, the offensive tackle from Oregon, either. So those are the 2 interesting names, I think, that could potentially change some things.
How How about there's an offensive tackle from Minnesota, Ariante, is it Ursi?
Ursi,
yeah.
Ursary, I think.
Ursary. I've seen his name pop up a couple places. I don't know what kind of tier we're looking at for the, after the first three offensive tackles, left tackles, but I don't know how far the drop is from that tier to the next, but he's a name to kind of pay attention to as well.
Yeah, I think all the offensive tackles just get oversold in a week. It's a really weak tackle class. So, I mean, Jesse picking defensive lineman's a safer choice because it's loaded, especially interior defensive line class. Now the Chiefs have Chris Jones. He is going to be 31, and they need someone to play beside him anyway. So I think you could pick a defensive tackle as a safer selection.
All right, final thought. Pro Football Focus came out with their top 100 players for the 2024 season just a couple weeks ago. The Chiefs in the top 100 were Joe Thuney at number 46. Patrick Mahomes was 39. Trent McDuffie was at 16. A quibble with any of those?
What was Chris Jones?
I didn't write Jones down. It's because Jones and Thuney were in the top, Creed Humphrey were in the top 10. They were like 8 and 9, something like that.
Okay. I was going to have a quibble if Chris Jones didn't make it.
or Creed, who highest graded center.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd ever put a center in the top 10, but
McDuffie 16, Mahomes 39, Thuney 46.
I mean, it's going to be based on the criteria. Like, I'm sure what Sam's point would be, which would be my point, which is if you're ranking the top players in the NFL, like the top 10 should be quarterbacks. Just based on the value. They touch the ball every play, and if you have a good one, you give yourselves a chance. And look at the playoffs every year. Who's in it? Lamar Jackson's in it. Josh Allen's in it. But Patrick Mahomes is in it. All the best quarterbacks are in that particular game. I guess if you're just going based off of your particular position, that's maybe a way you could have Mahomes land at 39 instead of at 3 or 4 or 2 or 1 or whatever it should be actually. But yeah, I mean, this is sort of what we talk about with the Chiefs is this is the position you want to be in. You have really good players. Their contracts are expiring, and they want to play for you again. You can't pay all of them. At some point, you have to make a tough Tyreek Hill decision and trade a guy and get draft picks and try to reload around the other pieces you have. But I think in general, that's a list that tells you that the Chiefs have drafted well, and they've maintained a lot of talent over time, and that's part of the reason that they're in this game every single year.
Is there anybody you think should have been on there?
Outside of those top 5?
Yeah. I mean, look, Rashee Rice was headed that way had he stayed healthy. I think he was definitely a top 100 player. I guess the next best arguments for the Chiefs would be Trey Smith being at the end of that.
Or Kelce.
Yeah.
Kelce could, but he was a top 3 tight end.
Yeah, I think he finished 3rd in catches and 5th in yards maybe. But I've continued to say I think the guy that had a really underrated season for the Chiefs was Justin Reed. I thought was a really good safety this year. So I actually think I'd rank him ahead of Trey Smith in a list like that, but I still don't think top 100.
I don't know if he's going to be back with the Chiefs. In fact, I would lean toward him not being back with the Chiefs, but he's going to be a good player on another team, a leader type of guy. I think if he goes to a non-playoff team, he might be just what that team needs, a player like him.
Listen, he was everything the Chiefs could have asked for when they signed him, and they obviously had somebody in mind once they lost Tyrann Mathieu, and it can be hard to remember now, but this Chiefs defense was not a very physical bunch when he first came in here. And once he started coming in there and coming downhill on the run and making hits and leading a young secondary in that way, they all followed suit. And so, the Chiefs most likely are going to wish Justin Reed well, but they are surely happy with the contributions he made. And that's one of those free agent signings that, even though it did cost some money, I think the Chiefs got every penny out of that they could have wanted.
All right, guys, great conversation as always. Big thanks to Jesse Newell, Sam McDowell for joining us, and to our producers, Randy Mason and Monty Davis. Join us again soon on SportsBeat KC.